Alrighty, welcome back to the Sweat Capital podcast. Today we are very lucky to have Dimitri Gremos up here in the Sunshine State, and we've put on our best weather for you, Dimmy.
Sensational, mate. It's Bris Vegas. What more could you want?
Yeah. What about me, mate? I'm also here.
Yeah. No, we got
Got out of bed this morning, mate. So
we got Will with us too. But you know, I'll probably spend a bit too much time with Will. So
yeah, it's very exciting up in God's country, Dimitri. Good weather. Actually spending this weekend at the coast, which should be good. Little Sweat Capital offsite.
Yeah.
So we've got lots planned. I don't know if you want to talk about what we're planning on getting done this weekend, but yeah.
Well, it's been a huge month, like massive month. Obviously, I can't believe this is second full month of ops now, and far out. Like, there's so much to unpack. We've had obviously 2 big episodes go out, notably Stephen Marshall and Paul Tranter. Stephen Marshall, we spoke about in the last one. You know, the American Australian Association, and obviously Paul Tranter, CFO of global CFO of Boston Consulting Group. So incredible pods.
yeah, no, I really enjoyed both of them, and I think our reception from our audience and then people that we've been speaking to is that they've certainly got a lot of insight into professional life in America and sort of some of the opportunities that are available there. I think just quickly to we unpacked Stephen a fair bit on our last episode, but Paul went out this week. I think he's a great story. Like, at the end of the day, the guy was he went back to high school at 22.
Yeah. To finish year 12.
To finish year 12. I don't think there would have been too many bookies that were giving him great odds to be global CFO of BCG. So
It's pretty wild. It's actually a crazy story when you think about it. And just the fact that he went from high school dropout to the CFO, probably second to the CEO, really. Like, a CFO's right up there at one of, if not the largest consulting company in the world. Like, it's pretty wild, from far north Queensland as well.
Yeah, from a dairy farm in far north Queensland. I think it's actually, funnily enough, it's probably one of the more untold stories that I think people would actually want to know about. Like, it's something that I could see Paul having an article done on him in the AFR that would go really well. Like, that story itself is pretty insane, right? Like, you hear, I read those articles in the AFR a lot, like whether that journo goes and has lunch with someone that's got a really cool story, and they talk about their journey and stuff.
Lunch with the boss.
Lunch with the boss. Yeah. And
still waiting for my invite for that.
It's in the checks in the mail.
Yeah, but I read those all the time, and there's just amazing stories on there. But yeah, when we're sitting down with Paul there in Boston, and you think about coming from middle of nowhere in Queensland to that, it's pretty remarkable, really.
Yeah, it was interesting, some of the tangible tools that he's developed through his career as well, and that he still uses day to day around, and we put a clip out on Instagram this morning around when you're asking for advice, one of the best questions is to ask, what advice should I be asking for? And sort of, asking his clients and people who, ordinarily the ones in a relationship where he'd be the trusted advisor to, in terms of what that does in breaking down a lot of barriers that exist sort of intangibly between people. I found that incredibly insightful.
And the point around being a bit vulnerable too in that moment when you ask for advice, and then so they sort of change their stance, and they sort of develop this this care for you, and they're like, okay, I want to give you some really good tangible advice that you can then go and implement. I thought that was a good point too. So it's not something you would think about doing much, but when he really unpacked that and explained that and why it's actually a really good question to ask people and to actually ask for advice. Yeah, that was cool, because obviously us young people were always asking for advice, but then to hear that, when he was given the call to be global CFO, the first thing he did was go and ask other people and his clients for advice was, pretty interesting.
I think on that, Will, you and I were at that Next Gen Ventures event yesterday, and Luke Anir was speaking there. He says one of the questions he gets asked all the time by, young people who gravitate towards him naturally because, you see he's founded Safety Culture, which is a $2.5 billion private Australian company. They go, oh, how did you get your mentors, all that sort of thing. And it was quite insightful, because as much as asking for advice is incredibly important, one thing that I'm sure Paul did after every time he did ask for advice was go and action it and then demonstrate that he did that. And that was what Luke was saying yesterday, is you never want to be sort of the person that's always asking for help, asking for advice, but never listening, if that meant like,
Thinking about it.
and listening and actually implementing it. And
Otherwise, it just goes a bit of a waste of time, me giving you advice if you won't go and implement it. Yeah.
Exactly. And like Luke was saying, you know, he's not a believer, sort of routine mentor catch-ups and that sort of thing. It's he's given people tips before that he hasn't spoken to for 3 years, but then they send him an email in 3 years' time saying, hey, Luke, you know how you told me to do X? Here's what I've done since.
Well, that's a good point, because I've always found this interesting when people say refer to someone as their mentor. It's like, well, like you sign up a contract or something. I don't actually understand that dynamic. I would never formally ask someone, can you please mentor me? Like, it's sort of just, you are being mentored by, you know, everyone around you. And
Why is this not natural as well?
whoever you're asking for advice from, that is mentorship. There's no need to formalize and to say, oh, I'll see you now.
And force some relationship or something where it's like, oh, we got to have monthly catch
The
up.
last Friday of every month, I'll see you then. It's like, well, just like whenever you action the advice, you can just hit them up, let them know. And usually people love, you know, having a positive impact on someone's life, especially
100%.
if it's someone with more experience and now you got an up and comer who's trying to find their way in their career, like a lot of our listeners, ourselves included. If so many times I've spoken with someone with more experience, more expertise, more runs on the board, and they've given me that advice and I've gone away, implemented it, and just haven't expected anything else from them. Just hit them up with a very simple email.
This is what I've done.
This is what I've done. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And just that goes a long way.
Yeah. No, I agree. And if you think about sort of the way humans work, like if someone comes to me saying, here's my big idea for what I want to do, and people have probably thought this of me as well, it's like, sure, great idea. Hopefully that works. And it's okay if you go and try it and you're not successful or whatever it is, but it's showing and circling back on the fact that you took on board what they said and keeping them in the loop as to how you go. And that's like the other thing Luke was saying at this event, and shout out to Mitch Hughes and the Next Gen Ventures guys for putting it together. I really enjoyed it. They were talking about, you know, people like, because Luke, in his view, investors, mentors, whoever it is in your life, he was coming from the founder perspective, the right people will gravitate towards you if you continue sort of following your gut and with a degree of passion in what you're doing. And that I think is mirrored by Paul's journey to some extent in a very different context, obviously within the corporate framework, but he just had that ridiculous passion and obsession and a willingness to listen and be curious. And I think that's my big takeaway from Paul.
Yeah, definitely.
It reiterates that you just keep it simple, because the thing about the advice that he gave us was to ask people for advice.
Yeah.
So often people are looking for a silver bullet that doesn't exist. It's just take care of the basics. Like, ask people for guidance.
Yeah.
That's step one.
Yeah.
It's just a no-brainer. But and it goes to show that can actually take you from a dairy farm on far north Queensland all the way to one of the biggest corporate gigs in the world. So
yeah. Just on that as well, I think he was also quite humble in saying, and probably quite right as well, in saying that he also had a lot of luck involved along the way.
Of course.
You know, there's that whole saying, you sort of create your own luck, you know, putting yourself in that position. But one of the big things that obviously differentiated him was the fact that, you know, he was from a dairy farm in central North Queensland, and I don't reckon BCG had that many applications from people of that type applying that year. So it's one of those things where sometimes you might think that, oh, there's no way that, you know, this big city slicker consulting mob that's he said it was the first time he'd been above like 3 stories when he went to the interview. 61st of all. Yeah,
exactly.
He's like, so he probably went in going, what do these city slickers want in giving me an interview here?
Yeah.
But it was actually probably the one thing that they did find him interesting for, and was probably the reason why he got the gig. So it's also another takeaway from me. It's like, you just never know when your experiences or your background will actually be enticing to a certain employer that you sort of had no idea it would be. Yeah.
So true. People love different. People like, if if everyone's cut from the same cloth, then you're always going to make the same rug. Like, it's like you need to have some sort of different, like a bit of an X factor almost. It's something that separates you, because it's like you got this stack of applications all from, you know, USID, UQ, etc., and then you've got dairy farm in North Queensland. There aren't many applications fitting that bracket.
Yeah. And like on that, not everyone's going to have sort of the incredible, like this one in a billion story, sort of Paul's. And so not everyone's going to have that story, but you can still differentiate yourself in other ways, in terms of things like sport and like
Yes.
your
Great
key interests in those sorts of things. And keeping diversity in your life is probably something that when I think about when I've done well, it's not normally, just one thing that's sort of sparked that. It's been my ability to call upon different things in life. And on the flip side, when I have sort of fallen into ruts at times, it's when you lose that breadth of experience.
Yeah, definitely. It's such a differentiator. It's because at the end of the day, we're always dealing with people, and people love dealing with people and dealing with people they like. And if you have something about you that's a bit unique or some sort of character element outside of the four walls of the office, you need to have a bit of personality, a bit of, some interesting experiences that you can draw upon. And it's almost counterintuitive because you're not, when you're, obviously he was born there, obviously. It wasn't a strategic decision, nor should it be. But it's just really, I think, a reminder to embrace whatever your interests are and also your current position.
Yeah.
And not be afraid of taking risks either that are going to take you away from the well-worn path.
Yeah.
I think that's and how we can apply. Obviously, everyone's going to apply that in their own way, in their own circumstances. But it's, if you're not doing what everyone else is doing, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah. And I think the other key thing was, if you think about Paul's investment in learning, like, so he identified, and he even identified that at an even younger age that
before high school,
that he wanted to go to boarding school in Brisbane because he had this love for learning, and he really enjoyed that part of his life. And be it structured learning or unstructured learning, I struggle to find a successful person that isn't obsessed with learning more and continually curious until the day they die. And so I think that's probably another trait that I really
it was pretty cool when he took us into there's like this iconic classroom in Harvard where they do their MBA.
Okay.
And it's been like the same for years. Like it's where Paul did his MBA.
Oh,
when he
wow.
went there. And so he was giving us a tour of Harvard.
That's pretty cool.
And went to the stadium, went through all the different famous landmarks and stuff. And then he was like, "Oh, let's see if we can get into this room here." And you go down this almost like tunnel thing, like the basement. And there's this like cool room where it's like set up like almost like a parliament type thing, right? Like some greys and everything. And there was a guy in there doing some study, and he let us in, and then we chatted to him, and he was like, "Oh wow, so you did this like 20 years ago?" He's like, yeah. And they were sharing experiences about their time there. It was actually the first week, I think, so he was just getting started.
That's so awesome.
And he actually, funnily enough, I think he said he worked in banking, didn't he? And then he also founded this.
I'm trying to remember what
it was. It was like a social initiative to essentially try and
remove barriers to getting into
education and these like sort of higher jobs in finance and law and stuff like that. So it's really interesting chatting to him about that actually. But yeah, also just being inside the four walls of Harvard was pretty cool, knowing that like, just the caliber of people that would have sat in those chairs that we were
and discussed ideas.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all it is at the end of the day. It's 2 arms, 2 legs.
Yeah.
It's just talking about ideas, learning, sharing knowledge. Like it seems like such an unattainable thing, especially in Australia. I was actually listening to Russell Crowe's recent episode on Joe Rogan, which was actually awesome, by the way. Highly recommend it. But one of the things he said in that is he obviously born in New Zealand, but spent most of his life in Australia. And one of the things that he said was that Australians and New Zealanders spend a lot of their time looking out, always the outside to the rest of the world, looking at the US, looking at the UK, Europe, etc. So when we are looking from here, looking out, Harvard is often seen as this, especially in the space of education or any sort of professional pursuit, it's seen as like the gold standard. But then for you guys actually to walk through the doors, walk through the hallways and see, it's just like classrooms like any other one. It's not, there's no secret. It's just hard work and curiosity. That's it. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, no, it is. And without wanting to be, labor the point too much, we saw sort of the reception of that whole US piece in our views and that sort of thing on the reel that we posted recently. I think that was, I don't know, one of you guys is probably better with the numbers in terms of how it's going, but that was sort of the first moment where we've had a little bit of, I wouldn't even call it virality yet, but we've had a little bit of traction.
A little pop.
Yeah,
it was cool. I think it's about checked it before we started. I think it was about 180,000 views on Instagram. And the same clip is like 1,000 on YouTube Shorts. so yeah, it's just shows the difference on that can occur on different platforms. But yeah, that was pretty cool. That was the Stephen Marshall clip. Most people we've gained over. I mean, when we last sat down and spoke at UCID for the last month, the October recap, we were at about 560, 600 followers, and now we're over 1,600.
Yeah.
Largely due to that video on Instagram, which has been a good boost, like a little pop for the socials. But yeah, that's been cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think the backdrop was pretty cool, and I know Brisbane's a beautiful city, but when you have the Empire State Building in the background for the reel, I think it helps a bit as well.
Mate, next time we're going to record in that room over there, back of Suncorp, mate. Then we'll go 250,000.
Wow. That's actually a great idea. We should get Darren Lockyer back on and do it with Suncorp in the background.
Oh,
Absolutely. It's crazy though. You know, we have that clip that went, you know, pretty well, and then is it just how engaged people get in the discussion?
yeah.
And it's like we're
Like 100 comments or
so
something.
laughing
Yeah.
at some of the comments, and it's, you know, oh, you know, no Australians the CEO of Walmart, which like there's, so that people are then going looking it up and they're sharing it with people going, oh,
Back and comment.
Yeah.
look at these hot shots that think Aussies run New York. Like obviously, you know, to some degree, that's a little bit of hyperbole.
Yes.
But it's just amazing how like the algorithm seems to lap that sort of stuff up, and
Yeah, it does.
it's I'm learning heaps about it because as you guys sort of know, I'm not too across how reels and that sort work. But yeah,
It's all right, mate. We're all learning.
But no,
Some slower than others. It's all right.
yeah, but it's cool. It's just cool to see the way that the algorithm does feed that sort of stuff. So obviously the caption that we had on the video was, if for those of you who haven't seen it, was, what do you mean Aussies run New York? And it was about Stephen Marshall talking about how exceptional Australians are in New York City, especially in a corporate sense, and listed off a few names of the people who are involved in big companies over there. And yeah, we just received a lot of, it's very polarizing.
yeah,
It's very
Yeah, which
polarizing.
I think is important, right? Like you need something where some people might sort of disagree. Like it doesn't have to be like something ridiculous
Yeah.
and controversial, but
Yeah.
like,
or yeah,
and the thing was, when we posted that, we didn't even think it would be that polarizing. Right? We sort of
not at all.
realized that if you're someone from the outside, not involved in our podcast, or didn't get to go to the US, or didn't get to hear about it through us,
Right.
you might go, oh, that's a load of rubbish. What do you like, Australians running New York? Because there's no way that could be true. That the CEO of Walmart or any division of Walmart is an Australian. That's just not true. So,
yeah.
yeah, it's very interesting how little bit of controversy is like sort of a good thing for the algorithm. Yeah.
It's amazing how when like a discussion starts at one point, it then, you know, branched out into tall poppy syndrome,
Yeah.
all these other threads.
Yeah.
And like there was this guy who put up a pretty aggressive comment that we wouldn't be able to talk about here, but it had like a couple of hundred likes talking about how Australians, you know, knock each other and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the point of the post at all. But it was like it's just funny how that media wheel
Yeah.
continues to roll. Yeah.
People just love all people are looking for on social media, or obviously generalizing here, but it seems like they're just waiting for a prompt or a fertile breeding ground for discussion. That's all they want. Like
That's true.
people spend so much time in the comments, and what was cool was, you know, it's been up there for like over 2 weeks now, I think, and then people actually going back and forth, like commenting days later on people who replied to their comments.
Yeah.
So it was like getting like threads of like 5, 6, 7, 8 comments, which it's gone so far from the actual video itself, but it's pretty cool, and the algorithm loves it.
Yeah.
Absolutely loves it.
Yeah.
And then you see another video. So the one we posted after that, which was the Matt McLennan one, to do with his experience at Goldman Sachs and how investment bankers get so much done.
Yeah.
Which was very cool insight. But that video was nothing overly controversial. 0 comments.
It didn't really evoke
The need to respond.
a need
to
to
it.
respond.
Wasn't that fertile breeding ground as you talk about?
Yeah.
And
for discussion.
The other learning I sort of had is and it sort of explains, you know, human nature. When you bring in things like you know, like Aussies, it's like, oh well, you know, I'm an Aussie, I've got a right to comment on this.
Yes.
And then if you're not an Aussie and you've got a counter view to whatever was being said or whatever, you sort of feel invited to contribute.
Yeah.
And that was
Really good point.
yeah, I think that was probably a big learning because I didn't really realize that's a consideration. So I don't know. Like I think the big challenge for us now and sort of the goal is to keep getting lots of interesting, thought-provoking content out on Reels, and then the real game is then converting that into
Views of the podcast.
into
That's
long-term listeners of the
Yeah.
pod. Yeah.
couldn't have said it better. Like that's,
Yeah.
you know, it's really cool having these, and we've spoken about this at length as well. It's really cool to have these little pops that, you know, reinforce that we're on the right track. But really, it doesn't mean anything if we're not converting to long-term listeners and ultimately people in our community who are aligned with where we're going. It's no use having 1 million followers with poor engagement and also people who aren't even our target demographic.
Yeah.
It's not just vanity metrics.
Yeah.
It's just to look cool. You'd much rather have 20,000, 30,000 people who are constantly engaged in all senses of the show. So not only listening, watching, but then also our other engagements that we're going to be and other sort of things that we're working on behind the scenes to try and bring to our audience.
Yeah.
That's really where the lifelong value comes. It's not just if you spend 15 seconds watching a video and commenting. It's only if we want to invite them into our community and that they feel a sense of connection that's like, oh, these are my people to an extent.
Yeah.
You know, that's
And that whole process you spoke about there of like an invitation into the community is almost like, it's not a physical, like, oh, you know, we welcome you. It's sort of a, you know,
They sign with their time.
correct.
The more time they spend with us, they're saying, yep, this is me. I enjoy this content. I spend time here. I learn from it.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, look at the power of content though, because if we go back to the business of days when you guys were just posting statics on LinkedIn versus even this video, like the guy that you mentioned just before we started at UQ, who saw that video of Stephen Marshall, and it allows us to reach more people and cast a wider net to reach the target audience that we want, the target listener, the type of people that we would, you know, have a coffee with, have a drink with, or whatever.
Yeah.
The people that are aligned with us, the people that, you know, on the same sort of journey.
Yeah.
So however we can solve for that type of person through content, that's the objective.
Absolutely.
No, it's fascinating. Yeah, no, it was a cool moment at that drinks yesterday when this bloke sort of saw me and you could sort of tell that he like recognized me and I was like, oh, do I know this guy from somewhere? I'm trying to like, what's his name? And then he came over and he was like, you know, he's had a few drinks. He was like, oh mate, love what you're doing with the podcast. And I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah, he was on
met you
he was
before?
on the waters by that point. I think someone got this guy. Like, yeah.
Anyway,
It was like 5:30 in the Arvo too.
Yes, that's our target listener. But no, it was actually, you know, it was a you know, not a cool moment, but it was interesting that, you know, someone had recognized us. And yeah, exactly right. From the Instagram reel, being actually on camera is important for moments like that when you're out at certain events and people go, oh, it's a face I recognize. I watched that reel, it was interesting. And then, you know, I sort of had the chance to then explain further what the podcast was to him. And he was like, oh, wow, it's interesting. I might go listen to, you know, the Paul Tranter episode because I'm interested in consulting. So, yeah, no, it's stuff like that creates conversations as well when we're out and about, all three of us, which is good.
The other thing about the sort of power of content that I found interesting, Luke Annear mentioned it yesterday. For context, Luke Annear is the safety culture guy, now runs a $2.5 billion business. He was a guy from Townsville and essentially no one knew who the hell Luke Annear was and who the hell safety culture were for a fair while. And even when they were quite big, and he was paying $700,000 in recruitment fees a year.
Wow.
And so his plan to remove that, and he sort of went to a few people within his network, and he did these videos that are on YouTube that you can look up, and essentially they're inbound applications for people who wanted to work and belong to that vision were crazy. And then so, you know, a huge cost for him, he significantly reduced through the power of content. And that for me was pretty insightful.
That's it. And that's the power of content. It's the power of community. It's the power of telling a story that people buy into. And I think in terms of from a recruitment perspective, I think no one's done that better than Stephen Bartlett, Diary of a CEO, because the way he's created this ecosystem around him now with Flight Studio and all the network that he's created. But the power of the show, which just started with literally him recording on some, you know, $100 microphone under his bedsheet in his apartment in London, only like 5 years ago, to where it is today. And he's got teams all around the world, studios all around the world. And it's, I believe now it's the second largest podcast just behind Joe Rogan globally.
He just raised a whole bunch of money.
Yeah. So it's pretty, but he's spoken about this at length, which is the power of the show and what it represents. People can connect with it so much more than just a LinkedIn ad, a LinkedIn job ad. It makes people inquire and want to actually work for him. And that's, I mean, ultimately, that would be the ideal situation for us as well. If anyone's like listening and wants to be involved, then send us a message. But it's because our ideal thing would be to build out Sweat Capital. And you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think to start with Sweat Capital with how we're working it currently and grow that out by hiring within our listenership.
Yeah.
People who have already bought in. There's no need for someone to be sold through an introductory module on who we are. Like, they are the experts. They live and breathe it. That's ultimately where we want to head.
That's Nirvana for sure.
Yeah. But like a group who's doing that relatively well, not in the media space, but in sort of that student founder space is like Next Gen. I mentioned them earlier.
Yeah.
So they have like these students based at each of the campuses around Australia.
Nice.
And they are just all inbound interest, people that get the vision, want to belong to that community. And that's sort of what we're saying, like in terms of the whole, and even coming back to that concept of mentors, like your mentors you'll naturally find, I think, by taking action, and then from that action, the people that you need in your life come to you. But if you're sitting still doing nothing, you're probably not going to find a mentor.
Yeah, exactly right. But on that point, there are mentors everywhere. Every conversation, every piece of content that you consume, every podcast, every video, anyone in your life can really impact the way you view the world. And just, it's like constant 1%, 1%, 1%. That's what it is. That's how I view mentorship anyway. Like we said, it's not a contract, but it's, And also, why would you, in terms of isolating yourself to just one formal mentor, you're then closing yourself off from so many other potential perspectives. Exactly.
Yeah. I thought, on the topic of Dimmy being our mentor, that's why we flew him up. Or he flew himself.
I was going to say, we didn't really fly him up. I don't think he got himself here.
Yeah. He flew himself up.
Got himself from the airport too, because we stopped.
That was actually pretty funny.
Business is booming.
Yeah. I'd committed to picking Dimmy up from the airport,
and then he was there
multiple times.
Look, and it was seconded to me.
No,
and then it was, hang on, that doesn't make sense because we can't park here. So get the train, mate.
It's become an R&D exercise, and it will be tax deducted because it was a bit of a test of Brisbane's world-renowned infrastructure, and it was fantastic. So,
no, awesome. So I thought it could be cool to unpack sort of what we got planned for this weekend.
Definitely.
Oh, and we're off to the Usman Khawaja Foundation lunch soon, thanks to our first ever guest, Stewie Giles.
Yeah, that'll be unreal.
That'll be good fun.
Playing for a good lunch.
Yeah.
Hear some cricket talk. Craddock's there as well, so should be interesting lunch.
Yeah. And I think like more broadly this weekend, to give our listeners an appreciation for sort of why we do these sorts of things. It's in building a business where, we've got Dimitri obviously based in Sydney, and then us based in Brisbane, for us to get together and understand, what makes each other tick a bit better, is certainly part of it. Like, we're going to Golf Central tonight, hit some balls, have a feed at their new brewery, but then also throughout the weekend, spend a lot of time in improving the show.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you want to get, spend some time on doing?
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, I love being up here. It's great. It's actually the first time obviously I've come up since we, kicked things off, which is really cool. And it's like super excited for the weekend. And in terms of, I think it was a really good idea that you guys had to do this offsite and to, obviously going down the coast tonight and really just try and focus on where we're headed as a
I've
show.
also stuffed the accom.
Just to throw a spanner into the works.
Yeah.
We're off to a good start.
Sleeping in the car tonight.
But like in terms of the podcast, Dimmy, like, what do you think we should be focusing on?
I think
this weekend?
For us this weekend, a lot of it is on improving the way that we handle the pre and post production. So it's actually building out the workflows, and this is part of why we have started with a 2-week or fortnightly cadence for the episodes, which we mentioned in our last monthly catch up. So now it's about, okay, we're going to reassess and evaluate how we've gone with that. Let's have a look at how it went, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and let's put in place some workflows so we can start from next week with weekly episodes. So that's from an operational perspective. I think it's also really helpful for me being up here and, with you guys in person, aside from obviously like all the fun we're gonna have, and golf and breweries and all the extracurriculars, it's really about getting into the nitty gritty of the quality of the conversations that you guys are having and trying to make these little adjustments and improvements. That's really where the value is, because, and we've spoken about this many times, the single biggest lever that a podcast has is the quality of the conversations. That if you solve for the quality of the conversation, and obviously the things that stem off from that, so that goes to preparation, research, guest selection, topics, conversational management, etc. If you solve for a quality conversation, everything else becomes easier. So it's really about breaking down episodes, breaking down the habits that we've all formed, and trying to say, okay, now how can we level up in this regard? So that's, those two things I would say, the big focus, the workflows and the quality of the conversations. And obviously, we've got other things to discuss. Newsletter is a massive one. Really keen to dig into that. But yeah, how about you guys?
Yeah, no, same. I think, big focus on the operational side of things, moving to weekly.
Yeah.
I think, it's probably a harder task than I definitely thought. And then I guess anyone listening would think as well, like there's a lot that goes into it, a lot of
Heaps.
nitty gritty stuff that you've sort of been driving with all the editing, which, Charlie and I probably can never actually fully appreciate until we sit down and like probably watch you do it for like the hours that you do it. Yeah. So no, it'd be, very keen to get on top of that. And then, our Kaizen internal thing where we continuous improvement is definitely,
And
massive
for context, Kaizen's that Japanese word that means
always improving.
Continuous improvement.
Yeah.
So that was the first big initiative that I sort of like tried to lead when I started, because with you guys, and this is working back at well before we were Sweat Capital, still while the show was the business of, it was a weekly thing that we still do every week.
Yeah.
And we've been fairly consistent with it, which is every week we say, okay, what's one thing that was really good in the podcast? We all re-listen. What's one thing that you guys did really well? What's one thing that was executed poorly? And then what's one thing that you're going to focus on the next time you sit down to record? And how have you guys found it so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's been good. Like, there's definitely things where you don't realize that you do them until you listen with the lens of what can I do better? You know what I mean? And like, I mean, there's plenty of times where we do a podcast and not listen back to it, to be honest. Like, business of days.
Why would you? Because
we've had the conversation. We was there. We had all the takeaways still, but going back and actually listening to the episodes.
Yeah. Because you're not listening for learning, you're listening for performance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which you really drove for us. So yeah, it's been a huge like shift. And yeah, I'd like to think that I've made some improvements, but long way to go.
Yeah.
And we're still early in the piece. I mean, like we were talking about the other day, like how many ums and ahs you cut out of the conversation.
Yeah, I've been counting them now.
And like, I don't know.
Will's got this saying that he says, if you want to go back and listen to some of our older episodes, where he goes, stuff like that.
Yeah, stuff like that, or things like that. Or I don't know,
things like that.
where I can't find a good way to round out a question, I'll just whack that at the end.
Yeah.
So,
and that's what we're trying to that's what we're trying to focus on. And I think one of the elements that we can improve on that is, and we mentioned this the other day, is having a situation where I take the podcast in its uncut form, just convert it into MP3, send it to you guys so you can listen back to it. Because often you guys will listen now back to the edited version. Yeah. But there are so many things that I'm listening to that I'm like, oh, that can be improved, that can be improved, that can be improved. But it's like almost a whole nother job to actually break all of those down into let's say like a 20-minute presentation showing you all of the examples, pre-edit, post-edit.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what we want to try and unpack and work towards, because that's where things unlock. Chris Williamson, one of my favorite podcasts. I know you love him as well.
Yeah.
One of the things that he always talks about with how he took the show from 2018 to when he just started in his room, just in his apartment in Newcastle, to where it is today, which is up there with some of the biggest podcasts in the world. If you haven't seen Chris Williamson, Modern Wisdom, the sets and the production is unlike anything on the internet, pretty much. It's pretty remarkable. And one of the things that he talks about all the time with podcasting is the fact that the enabler for him was when he decided to go pro. when he actually looked at it as a professional pursuit. He's no longer just a guy who talks with a mic in front of him. It's no, I'm a professional podcaster. The way I prepare, so that goes to sleep, nutrition, the way that you actually watch game tape, review yourself, the way that you research for the guests, the way that you handle the production, the way that you interact with the guests, everything from the way that you meet them and greet them through the door, how you say goodbye, the way, all the processes. It's amazing when you view it through, like, if this was an Olympic sport, how would I do it?
Yeah, well, like, the funny thing I always find, be it podcasting, careers or whatever, if someone wants to be a high performer, and I think that's a lot of what our show's about, is creating a connected community of high performers. Often we do it through the career lens, but at the end of the day, it's people who are ambitious that want to be high performers. If you wanted to win a gold medal at the Olympics and you're like, oh, I'm not drinking, like, I'm sleeping, going to bed early, all that sort of thing. No, everyone's like, wow,
I know.
good on you. But if you want to be the best chief marketing officer or you want to achieve that one day at a company, and you're like, oh, sorry guys, I'm just working on this. This is my thing for a bit. I can't do this. Everyone's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I find that so interesting because such a small portion of the population is going for a gold medal at the Olympics or something like that. But we can all have our own sort of gold medal. And it doesn't mean like you have to be ridiculous and no fun. But I think that's a really good point you raised there.
But it's so true, isn't it? Like, looking at it's someone is so willing to give a hall pass to say to someone who's like, oh, trying to get off the drink, let's say, if it's for some sort of sporting pursuit, or if it's I'm running a marathon tomorrow or something. It's like, oh wow, okay, like, good on you, like, what are you still doing here, sort of thing. Whereas if you're saying, I'm working on editing a podcast, like, the best I can possibly do tomorrow,
people like, think you're insane,
you're a weirdo, like, but it's like, well, why does one pursuit outweigh another? We shouldn't diminish the purity or diminish the, I guess, the quality of that pursuit only because it's not public facing.
Or because it's not public facing is probably the right way to put it, but it's not perceived as the thing or cool. Like, it's
it can just be your gold medal that you're aiming for.
And that mightn't equate to money or fame or anything. It's just
because there's no external scoreboard, there's no it's not like, oh, everyone knows the Olympics and when it's going to be on. Everyone knows if you're a professional football player, professional rugby player, whatever.
Your stats, they can see like the time you run. Whereas, like, if you're working in a job, you leave the office, no one knows that you've just had a cracking day. No one can go see that or go read about it. Or, like, maybe there's times where you're in the paper or something, but, like,
one off. It's like, it's not.
It's interesting that, like, you can have your own gold medal, but it's the scoreboard's opaque. It's like you can't see how people are going. So it's like this weird thing where
it's probably, I've never thought about it like that, but, like, it's probably why, like, investors get a lot of, because I guess if you're a fund manager, you have a bit of a scoreboard.
There's a scoreboard.
That's probably why, like, Buffett is so well known.
Is
because he's obviously just been so well performed on the scoreboard for so long. But the best, tax accountant at EY, who's just been, the top 3 tax accountants for year on year, and they might appear in some list or whatever, but society as a whole doesn't. It's quite interesting.
It reinforces that it's you versus you. Everyone's on their own journey. As cliche as that sounds, everyone really is running their own race.
I just cringed as you said that.
I know. Yeah, but I can't. I'm struggling to find the correct way of embodying this sentiment, which is that it shouldn't also be the accolades. Like, even you just mentioned the example of the tax accountant. It's like they shouldn't be striving necessarily only to be the top 3 tax accountant. It should be the fact that, the people that they did work for today, yesterday, the day before, they have got, the maximum amount they can have in their bank account, the more that they can spend on their family, etc., etc. That it's a headache they don't have to worry about. That is the pursuit. That is the goal is a constant. It's not a fun destination.
It's this dynamic state, and that, I think, is the big obsession that we are trying to build into us. Is that whether, and I know we mentioned, like, a clip getting 180,000 views or whatever, but that shouldn't be the obsession. It should be the obsession with getting all this right and falling in love with that constant sort of, indiscreet state.
The process. Falling in love with the process that's all we can do, really. Focus on the inputs, the outputs will take care of themselves inevitably. But
Awesome.
100%. All right, keen for this weekend, lads. Should be good.
Yeah.
Keen to rip in.
Yeah, it's just lay out the foundations for the next, 12 months and beyond.
How long have we been going? We're probably running late for bloody lunch.
Yeah, we should head off.
Should
Yeah.
get a reel on.
Yeah.
Awesome. Alrighty.
All right,
Good stuff.
stuff, lads.
See you next month.
Yeah.